I rank where the view is nothing less than phenomenal. For how I express and project from my abdominal. The only view better, both my daddy and my mama know. No living parents, my sons give me balance. My wife is my serenity, this mic is my identity. The world is foul enough, that's why I write without obscenities. Provoking danger with broken language and spoken anguish. Begging to get hurt, why would you ask to go through changes? Yes, Lord, life's a chessboard, master the angles. Control the tempo, be the one who holds the info. Acknowledge is just as deadly as machete swings. When spoken, the truth is as potent as that Medellin. While others swear the style is free, I just let it ring. Our time is undervalued, soldiers make us better kings. My fans on my shoulder, reaching after better things. Today I take the shot, for them I'd rather set the screen.
My mama told me follow my dreams. My daddy told me get it by any means. Stand tall, make him bow to a king. But I've evolved, you can see the resolve. Look in my eyes when you speaking to God.
Life and for those who we caught up in using what I was taught with the muse. I guess they call it proving I'm more than an artist. Penciling out my darkest while stenciling out a harvest. And storing what gets me from A to B, just like garages. Instrumental with collages. Envision what I've been drawing. Broadway to give you rhythm like the great Lena Horne. So bent on, found comfort in the storm. Find peace and on when you see them others perform. Organized chaos, I'll cast it like hey ya.
Yo, party people in the place to be. What's good? It's your number one chief rockin' Knicks Universe, your main man, Uncle Freezie. Welcome to the premiere Knicks in the Nighttime show. What's good, everybody? Welcome to the Knicks at Night podcast, man. Salute, salute, salute. Man, I see all my people in the building. Man, Andios is in the building. Tori B is in the building. Salute to the Bronx, because if it wasn't for the Bronx, y'all already know the rest. Y'all already know the rest, man. Salute. Fritz Alcindor is in the building tonight, man. I'm joined by Lee from a bunch of different things, man. Maybe y'all know him from the Nick of Time show, but man, Lee is legitimately everywhere, man. I'm excited about the opportunity to do the one-on-one with Lee. Lee, what's good, man?
What's going on, man? Double blessings to you, Uncle Freezie. Great to be a part of a show. Fritz Alcindor, the great mod god, the fifth Beatle for the KOT show, friend of a channel, friend of every channel, has been telling me for a long time you've been wanting to chop it up. So I did my best to make sure I made myself available to come give some love to what you guys are doing over here.
For sure. For sure. And what we're doing over here is serving the Knicks community, right? As fans. And so what we do over here is have these, we basically talk that talk the way Knicks fans like to have that talk to them, right? Deep conversations a lot of time, most of the time, emotional outbursts and such, because we're fans. And that's what fans do, right? It's the reason why we can stay connected to the Knicks, because we have places where we can have these conversations, emotional outbursts, and occasionally just chop it up about things that matter. So salute to Ismail Rivas. I see you out there. I see you, Ismail Rivas. What's good, man? Donald Cannon out there. What's good? Hey, my brother from another, Allah Wise is out there. So everybody, so we were a tad bit late, and the reason why we were is because I asked Lee a question, and he got in his bag. I'm not saying he made us like. What I'm saying is I was so in tune to what my guy was saying. I know y'all are about to enjoy this conversation, right? So basically what I asked Lee before we got started was, since he gets to visit other fan bases and gets to speak to fans of other teams and sometimes sports at different levels, when he sees those other fans, right, and then gets to come home to the Knicks fan base, I imagine the experience is different. And so I'm just going to ask Lee to just share with y'all a little bit on what he mentioned to me about what the feeling is like when you visit another team's fan base and then you come home to the Knicks, and the feeling you get. Like, are the Knicks fans really crazy rabid fans, or are most fan bases at every level just about the same?
Profound question. I'm going to do my best to land the plane twice.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
It's so good. I'm coming down from a psychedelic mushroom trip today. I spent the day writing poetry. I'm working on a book of poetry about my mother and our relationship. So I spent the day getting inside my head and getting inside the universe's third eye to find myself and find my voice on what I need to write about. So I'm ready to talk Knicks, man. You caught me right at the tail end, so I'm coming down. So I'm gonna land myself as I land a plane. Yeah, to talk about fan bases, I've had the privilege, deep privilege, to write about the NBA at large for the Guardian as a culture writer. So I try to find the intersection of race or class or gender or social issues that are going on in the NBA at large. Very easy to do that. Plenty of opportunities to do that. So when I'm talking about other fan bases, if I'm writing about the Orlando Magic or the Charlotte Hornets or the Houston Rockets, I try to find the loudest, most vivacious, most passionate voices on YouTube and social media to get their point of view, because I think it's easy to miss the forest for the trees and not really understand what do fan bases care the most about, right? When you think about the Houston Rockets, they're doing a great job. Ime Udoka, maybe a coach of the year candidate, nice young core, but there's a lot of issues with the way that fan base has with him and his out of timeout plays, his out of bounds plays, his rotations to end games, what's going on with Reed Shepherd, those type of situations. Didn't send gun the ball. So I think that what the Knicks care about are very different than what I think the writers at large and guys like Zach Lowe or guys like Brian Windhorst, a lot of the time that fans get upset with the media talking heads because they really don't know the pain that Knicks fans specifically have went through over the last 20 years and why we care so much about Tom Thibodeau, why we care so much about Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns being seen as soft, wanting to be a tough team. All these issues are intrinsic to us as fans, specifically millennial fans, because people who are between the age of 35 and 45, we were too young for the championship years, a little too young to think, be self-aware of what we were witnessing with Ewing. Most of us were too young to really have had X's and O's at that time to really appreciate what Pat Riley was running, what Van Gundy was running on the defensive end of things. We have only really known the Scott Layden, the Isaiah Thomas, the Steve Mills, the Phil Jackson, those eras, which are epochs of poverty. And when you have only experienced or mostly known poverty, myself, someone who grew up in poverty, you tend to think in a poverty mindset at times and something you have to battle against to understand and be so grateful what you have in front of you. And what we have in front of us right now is probably the best team that I have ever seen in my fandom. I became a fan in 2002, the year after we made the Eastern Conference Finals. So I've only known poverty. I was too young to really recognize and be appreciative of what I had with the 90s Knicks. I've only known poverty. So Knicks fans are very specific in that. The reason I think that we kind of have you can call us a lot of different things. We're misanthropic, we're negative. The reason for that is we're always waiting on shit to hit the fan. We're always waiting on something to happen that says, oh yeah, to remind us, this is what I know. This feels comfortable again. And it's unfortunate that we're like that. I can be guilty of that sometimes too, but these other fan bases, they're mostly younger. They're mostly Gen Z kids that are chronically online. So the way that they interact with the game is very different than guys who are over 35 like me who engage with the game. And if you look at Knicks Twitter, it's also a very unique subset of demographics. It's mostly skews older. Most of the fans who are on Knicks Twitter are over the age of 35, where the fan bases of other teams are under the age of 35. They're the ones that are chronicling. We are online because we need the sense of community, but we also need the sense of shared misery. It's important for us to commiserate together so that we don't feel alone. As someone who grew up in Dallas, only my father was the only other Knicks fan I knew. He passed on this, could be a gift, could be a curse, depending on how you're right. Knicks fan to me over 20 years ago. And in that, I've only had him and I. So when I found Twitter and I found KOT and I found YouTube, I was like, every single thought, feeling, and urge I have, I'm going to share so I'd commiserate together, because I've only been in this pain with one other person, my father, for the last 20 years. So I think sometimes, again, it can be a little misleading on Knicks fans as a whole and how we see this team. I think we made fun of a lot. Even Brunson and Hart laugh at how intense we are. They had the video of Uncle Raw, who was like, listen, like, stand like you need to be in the gym shooting threes. I understand that mentality, but the reality of it is that we are a fan base that has only known pain and suffering. And when that is a history, it is very hard to see the future and for anything but the potential to go back to that.
Right. Man, you mentioned a few things. The emotional dam breaking, I feel that, right? And because I shared this often, I just want to say it here in front of and I'll just keep it short though. My first favorite basketball team was the Harlem Globetrotters, because as a little kid growing up in the New York tri-state area, when you heard Sweet Georgia Brown, the commercial on TV, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then when you go to the Garden, my first few trips to the Garden was not to see the Knicks. My first few trips to the Garden were to see the Harlem Globetrotters. And then one day I see the poster of a guy from the Knicks, and I was like, who are they? Are the Globetrotters? As a kid, I'm like, are the Knicks going to play? Are the Globetrotters going to play the Knicks? That Knicks team can't be the Globetrotters. This is my early experience of. And then when I find out, when I get find out about the Knicks and who they are, I meet Clyde Frazier, and I'm a very tall human being. I also mention that a lot too. I'm 6'5" or thereabout. But as a kid, I remember meeting Clyde Frazier and him being so tall and having to reach down and put his hand on my head. And I was thinking, wow, that guy must be taller than Superman. Right. And so when you mention these things, those are like my early experiences. Like when the Knicks won their championships, when they won their second championship, I was probably grade school age, getting into this thing. And when you're a kid, you think, you know what? They won a championship. They'll probably win from that point, you're thinking the Knicks are going to win a championship every year, or at least be in contention every year. Right. But from that moment to now, the Knicks have not won a championship. And it kind of drives my passion, but it also drives that space that you mentioned where you're hungry. And if you don't know hunger, you can't explain it. You have to come from poverty to be able to explain that feeling to someone else in order for them to understand. And in terms of private, man, I grew up in Jersey City. We didn't have much money. Basically, our entertainment didn't come from vacations or fancy trips. It came from sports, because we didn't have money to do other things. Right. But to the point where you mentioned about Charlotte and Orlando, I often catch games in Charlotte, Orlando, Atlanta, Washington, in DC, and I see those fan bases that you mentioned. Man, when I go to those games, bro, the in arena feeling in those places is amazing. When you talk to fan bases of other teams, when I talk to fan bases of people of fans of other teams, man, they don't hate the Knicks. They hate the fact that the Knicks come, enter their arena and take over. But they enjoy NBA basketball. And you can't talk trash about LaMelo Ball to them. They won't stand for it. Right? You can't talk trash about Trae Young. They won't stand for it. You can't talk trash about Paolo or Franz. They won't stand for it. Right? Let me ask that. This is I saw you guys talking the other night, and you guys brought up something, and I was going to put it in the chat, and I was like, you know what? Now I'll save this question for Twitter, or whenever you and I have a interpersonal interaction. So since we're having one, I'm going to ask you this based on what I heard you guys talking about the other night, and I think it was about maybe a week and a half ago. So I'm going to ask you this: with just about 5 seasons completed in the Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau era, are you satisfied with the direction of the team? And do you think they have enough to end this championship drought?
Ooh. Those are two very different, very intense questions. The first one, yes. I am I'm an optimistic person by nature. And I also want to mention that I don't watch any other sports. Basketball is the only sport that I watch and the only sport that I love. I grew up My dad's been a lifelong Knicks fan. He's from New York, moved to Texas, met my mom, had me. But my interests have always been, I mean, you see it, that I'll put my bio. I'm a writer. I'm not a content creator. I don't make videos. I help out with the KOT show, but I consider myself a writer. I write about culture. I write about politics. I write about art, but I also write poems and I write plays as well. So that's how my brain's always working. So I see the Knicks in this very Shakespearean tragedy in many sense, especially because my experience is so it's founded in tragedy. My first year as a Knicks fan, we just got Antonio McDyess. Allen Houston was supposed to come back, and I was like, okay. Now, when I get into something, I do a lot of research. I was like, wow, McDyess in Denver. This guy looks like he's a pretty good player. I didn't know a lot of the nomenclature of basketball, so I was just seeing what people were writing, right? I didn't have my own first-hand perspective. I was like, Allen Houston, this guy's a little bit loved by Knicks fans. He was my dad's favorite player. My dad had a jersey. I was like, cool, all right, I'm choosing to get into basketball to bond with my dad. This team looks pretty good. My very young novice mindset was like, it's time to win a championship.
Right.
Only little did I know, Matthijs would never even play a regular season game with the Knicks because he would get, in great Knicks fashion, injured before he was able to even put on a jersey for us in the regular game. Right. And he got injured preseason. So looking at that point on, in the context of the Dolan-owned era, I think this is a fantastic job by Leon Rose to build a team. He's building a team differently than anyone else has ever built a team. Almost every champion that has won a chip in the last 20 years, I call that under modernity, 21st century. Yep. Most of a team, at least the core, 2 out of 3 pieces, have been organically drafted, developed into the first, second, and third option. That's not us.
Right.
Are on the fringes. Mitch, Deuce, the rookies. Most of the guys we drafted, the Obies, Grimes, IQ, they're gone. They've been gone now for a while. This team has really been built through trades, which was very reminiscent of Isaiah Thomas years, where Isaiah was trying to trade a team together and try to win a quick fix championship. And then we have Jalen Brunson through free agency, and then iHeart and Devo through free agency too. But no team has really won a championship with only 1 or 2 guys in the regular rotation that were drafted. Typically, it's one in the starting lineup, and either first, second, or third option is someone they drafted. So looking at the roster, it's very unconventional, and it's really been done through friendship and relationships, which is very anti-Knicks. The Knicks really went after guys they had no relationship with. They weren't even aware of their medical history. They weren't aware how what their history in terms of playoff performance was. We got names to be put on paper to look good to fans. Now we have a team that really seems to fuck with each other and to really have each other's back as human beings. Maybe not in the tough street guy way, but our fan base would like for them to be. But nevertheless, I think they really care about each other. And these guys like each other, and they like their coach, and they like the owner, and they like the GM. And they're all playing in unison as one under a singular identity, that of Tom Thibodeau. And I think for the most part, he's done a very good job. And now to fade into the second question, the championship, yes, I do believe that Jalen Brunson will deliver a championship to the New York Knicks. I think there are some things on the peripheral, maybe like another wing that needs to be brought in, a veteran guys in those positions, because Tibbs ain't going to play anything other than a veteran.
Right.
That need to be solidified for the bench. And I think there needs to be one tweak to the starting lineup that moves Hart to the bench for another Devo type guy. Devo meaning team defender, not necessarily someone who's an OG defender, but someone who defend on a team level. At least keep his man in front of him on an island, but also as a volume 3-point shooter. We built a 5-out team, yet we are not 5-out because Josh Hart either can't hit a 3 or refuses to hit a 3.
Or refuses to take the shot.
Right. He does everything else on an all-star level but score. So I think he is best used as the bench, as the engine of the bench. But once we figure that out, who is the starting 2 or 3, depending on how you see the starting lineup, and then we get one more backup big, I think continuity. Once we continuity of Boston, Cleveland, OKC, we're not there. This team is ripped apart almost every year. Brand new starters are forged together with really Brunson and Hart as the nucleus. Then I think we will win a championship. I think within 3 years, I'll see Jalen Brunson hoist the Finals MVP over his head. So I'm good on what Leon Rose has done, and I'm very optimistic about the future.
Okay. So right now I'm in a neutral. I'm in a neutral space, right? I am at this point in my Knicks fandom, I basically exist from day to day, right? to your point though about, I think you made a great point about how conventionally a championship team is built through core players that become great before you have to pay them big money.
Right.
Right. So, like if you consider the Golden State Warriors, where they were thrust in contention when Steph and Clay were not making max money. Now, they won a championship when Clay and Steph were making max money, but the first few championships, Steph and Clay together were not making max money. Same thing with Tatum and Brown. They were thrust in contention before they got max veteran money. And to the point of how the team is constructed, man, Lee, I'm not going to lie to you. This is so new. This is so un-basketball-like. This is, watching Leon Rose is very baseball-like, where you trade prospects to bring in veterans to win within a 1 to 2 to 3 year window. I don't know if I'm as optimistic, and it's not because I'm a hater or I don't want it to happen. It's just one of those things that I've just never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to feel about it, right? Not that I don't want it to happen. I want the Knicks to win this year, but I don't know how to feel about bringing in young veterans. The players that Leon Rose brought in were at that age of go play your first contract, get all the young mistakes out of your system, bring in guys at around 25, 26, and maybe Cat is older, maybe Josh was older, but they were not 30, right? They weren't 29 or whatever they were, right? When Leon Rose did this. Now, I'm going to ask you this, because I understand where you mentioned the 3-year window. Well, in this 3-year window, say within the next 3 years, I'm not going to include this year. I'm going to say next year, say 2026, and then that window, 1 to 3 years. Do you see the Knicks making a change to the roster that brings in those championship pieces in order to start that timeline that you just mentioned? The big man off the bench, maybe Josh to the bench, maybe another wing, a Devo type guy. Do you see them maybe moving another heartstring in order to acquire that piece?
Yes, but I think it's going to be the way that like what Leon did with Devo and iHeart, where there were two guys who were kind of coded to be a certain level player and didn't have a ceiling beyond that. And Leon and his team, Walt Payer and Brock Aller, Tibbs, see something that can be unlocked in Tibbs' system and the players that he would be surrounded by. So I think it's going to be that way, where it's not going to take a Josh Hart to be traded to bring those guys in. It's going to take, filling a salary slot. Like as the CBA increases year to year, we use that extra $14 or $15 million to sign someone to a 3-year deal, or use that with some remaining salary fill or a precious re-sign trade to go get that guy. I don't think it's going to take someone out of a 7-man rotation, 7 being the starting 5, Mitch and Deuce, to go get him. I think it's going to be like Devo. Devo was sound outright in free agency. iHeart outright in free agency. I think those are the type of guys that are going to end up filling that role more so than another bid splash. I think the bid splashes are done. And James Dolan on the Roommates podcast, which was the only episode I've ever watched of the Roommates. I don't really care for it. I wanted to watch that one because hearing Dolan was very important to me as a fan of his franchise over the last 24 years. I wanted to hear what the man had to say about the pain that he's caused me as a fan with his ineptitude. And he referenced, it wasn't scripted. He said that when moves are pretty much done, this is a team that's going to be together for the while, which means that's what Worldwide West and Leon are telling him. Those are the conversations happening behind closed doors that we are not privy to as fans. So I think this core, Cat, Bridges, OG, Hart, Brunson, probably Deuce too, they're not going anywhere. I think there's going to be outlier moves that are made with the rise in CBA to allow us to get those guys.
Right. Okay, so let me say, I'll say this. Two, I'm glad you mentioned that about the Roommates podcast. When I say this, I'm gonna say it this way. I'm a fan of Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, and so I praise them when they're great in my mind, and I critique them when I feel like something's going on. But I'm existing in a day-to-day thing, so from day to day, you'll hear me say Brunson was great, and then you'll hear me say Josh was terrible. But to the point that you make about Dolan, I think James Dolan is probably the best owner in the NBA that does not have a championship, right? Because what he does is I'm not going to say probably post Phil Jackson or post Isaiah Thomas. He expresses to me and probably others that he understands what relationships are about, right? Like why it's important to have great relationships, not only on the court, but in the building. How a good working environment permeates everywhere, infiltrates everything. And it makes you feel good about coming to work and rooting for the Knicks, even when the win-loss record may not be ideal, right? And so when you mentioned what Dolan said, I'm like, yeah, that's probably typical. We don't hear him enough, but that's about in line with what he does. Like Steve Mills is still employed by MSG, I think.
Yes.
Right. And so the Roommates podcast, I'm not a fan because I think the show isn't maybe boring, right? I like Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, and the dry white guy, right? I can't remember his name. They call him Matty Ice. Yeah. Yeah. So I like them. I don't know if they're lit enough for me.
Fair, me too.
Yeah, but what I will say, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this. So the Knicks have hit on certain free agents, and then they've maybe not hit on others. And I'll give an example. The Dante was a hit, not only because of how he fit, but what we were paying him while he was here, right? And then what he brought to the table, right? Like the 3-point shooting, the leadership, the toughness, right? The toughness of Dante. He was probably a perfect fit for what the Knicks were looking to do, and his salary, getting him for the mid-level exception, in a market where guys were significantly overpaid. Fred VanVleet, Bruce Brown, and others were really overpaid. And then there were free agents like Cameron Payne. And I love Cameron Payne. I don't know if we get everything that we need out of Cameron Payne. I love Cameron Payne, bro. Right? I wish he could give us everything that Dante gave, but for some reason, he's not able to get that second unit over the hump. I believe it's because he and Landry Shamet are not a natural, organic pairing. They just can't play together. When one guy plays well offensively, the other one doesn't. Right? When one guy plays great defensively, the other doesn't. In my mind. And it may be, one of those things where they can't because they play with an undersized guard or an undersized wing that disguises as a guard. And it is obviously the future of the bench unit. So when you mention that, I'm thinking, how many bites at the apple are we gonna, get here in the next summer to bring in that Isaiah Hartenstein impact guy, or that Dante DiVincenzo impact guy that you're mentioning? Do you see the Knicks maybe looking at bringing in 2 or 3 of those guys and then just ignoring the development of the young guys that they drafted?
You said a lot of things. There were 2 that I really disagreed with. One was that James Dolan is the best owner that doesn't have a championship.
Okay.
I disagree like 1,000,000,000% with that. I think James Dolan's mostly been one of the top 2, 3 worst owners
Okay.
in basketball. There's an argument in all of sports, professional sports, for the last 20 years. He has gotten and appears better because, in my opinion, of how competent Leon Rose is.
Okay.
But I mean, let's be honest. It was less than 6 years ago when Steve Mills was running the team for his second time. He ran in between Phil Jackson and Glenn Grunwald. First time, he's the one who gave Tim Hardaway that awful extension.
Yeah, awful extension.
Yeah, and did a bunch of ass crap moves during his first time with the team, and had no experience before that in anything involving basketball management or decision making. So I think Rose has done some revisionist history for Dolan, and Dolan has learned to shut the hell up and get the hell out of the way. And he made that on the podcast as well. Different word choice, but and I give him props for that. But like, he's had his toy too in the Sphere that's taken a lot of his mental capacity away from the team and creatively in Vegas. But I would point to like Fertitta in Houston, or the conglomerate that owns the OKC, or Para in Memphis. I think those guys have been better owners than James Dolan in their tenure in the last 5 or 10 years each, or in OKC's instance, 15 years. So that's that. I want to say my piece on that, because I give credit to Dolan for learning when to step away, but the malfeasance that he has exhibited is iconic. And just the Isaiah era alone, being the MSG being sued for sexual harassment with Anucci Brown Sanders, it was unbelievable. Anyways, the second part that you said that I disagree with is campaign.
Okay.
I don't think campaign and Landry Shaman are a bad pairing. I think what campaign lacks is what most third string point guards or backup lead guards lack, which is the capacity to create a play out of a broken set. So I think Thibodeau has 15 or 20 plays that he employs throughout the game. Most of it is that high pick and roll with 2 or 3 alternative options happening on the perimeter, off ball, guys coming off curls, that a lot of the actions being ran for Bridges. Now we're seeing some of that action being ran for Shamet. But I think what campaign is unable to do, that Brunson is one of the best, if not the best in the NBA doing, is once that play is broken down, once you play the Rockets and Amen Thompson's free safety and all over the floor, and he cuts off your first, second, and third option, what do you make out of the remaining opportunity you have within 5 seconds? That's where Jalen Brunson and most starting level guards excel at. Even the Fred Van Vliet is probably the best example of a backup guard that was able to create out of a broken action as a primary lead ball handler. Payne is not. Payne is a gunner. Payne's first instinct is to get his own shot in the flow of the offense, which makes him a good addition for Thibodeau's read and react schemes on offense, but it makes him a poor playmaker for others when the play that's being ran or called out is being broken down, because the guys that he tends to share the court with, Deuce, also not a strong playmaker. Shamet, a poor playmaker. Precious, an awful playmaker. Mitch, a below average playmaker. And then sometimes Cat or Bridges, who mostly are looking for their own shot, but Cat specifically can out of the high post with one hand find a backdoor cutter or swing over for an open shot to 3. But that's where I think campaign does not do what Dante did. Dante was excellent at the 2, sometimes at 3, at formulating a play out of a broken set. Dante was unbelievable, and most time it involved himself finding freedom and space to store a shot, but he also found his teammates and a lot of opportunities, specifically Josh Hart, who I thought he had great chemistry too, and OG. So I think that's the main difference with campaign. It's not that he has bad on-court chemistry or fit with Shamet. He doesn't have the skill set we need that Dante had, which is create opportunity out of a broken set.
Okay. I think we agree, right? Because the thing about Dante is the relocation is, for in terms of Knicks guys, in terms of Knicks players, Dante's relocation with us is legendary in terms of Knicks fandom, right? Not overall. He's not Klay Thompson relocation. He's not Reggie Miller, Ray Allen relocator. right? But in terms of what we've seen from the Knicks, Dante, relocation, finding the right spot, finding the place to get the hockey assist with Dante was legendary with us. Dante knowing when to shoot and knowing when to pass, keep the ball in the player with the hot hand is legendary, right? Because there has to be a balance. And people forget, man, Robin there's Batman and then there's Robin. Well, Robin's a superhero too, right? The Justice League, Superman, Batman.
Dick Grayson.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you feel me? Like you know, when you talk about a Justice League in terms of a comparison, well, Aquaman's a superhero too. You know, and so in terms of the Dante point, the thing with Cameron Payne is I can appreciate the veteran presence over the course of an 82 game schedule. It's one of those things I love about veteran guards. They're not starters because they have some flaw in their game. For most of them, it's consistency. Like when their shot's not going, what else can they do to help a team win? That is probably, you know, those guys, right? You mentioned Tom Thibodeau's offense. And it was like a thorn in my palm when you mentioned it. It was like a rock in my shoe. To me, I don't see the consistent secondary actions and primary plays that you saw. Can you share examples of that with me? Like educate me so that I'll know what to look for?
Yeah, I think it's the efficiency of it is dependent on the other guys to move off ball. When we've had our best success, it's when in terms of a set play, because I would say 60% of what I watch, and I'm not a former ball player, so I'm not watching with instinct. I'm watching with like a trained eye, right? And trained eye, you constantly have to study to keep it fresh. What I see is 60% of it is in the motion of things. But the motion's the most important part. Are guys moving off ball? Is OG and Hart saying off ball screens from either Shamet or Bridges to come off that curl, catch and shoot on the 3-point line? Or is it Brunson just breaking down the defense, dribble penetration, and then kicking out, hoping that whoever he's hitting out to is someone capable of hitting a three, giving it OG McHale? That's most of the action. But some of it is legitimate play calling. That's why I said 15 to 20 plays, and it depends. The high pick and roll is no one runs it more than us. But I see a lot of pistol action being implemented in the Knicks offense. Really since the mid-January, there's been an extra emphasis of pistol action. And a pistol action play won the game for us against who was it the other night? Portland. That was a pistol action play between Josh Hart and McHale. McHale caught it off of that dribble handoff opportunity and then squared up for a three. So that was a drawn out play out of a timeout that Tom Thibodeau steamed up for a guy that he had a little bit of a rift of before the game started, that were they enough for a closed door meeting to clear the air. And he still had the mindset that this is our best option in this scenario, is to that switch off of that ball screen for Kleindienst to be on Bridges, and Bridges to have the opportunity off the catch to pull up and have space, because Kleindienst's feet doesn't have the mobility to close out on that 3-point shot. So that's an example of a literal end of game play that Tibbs steamed for Bridges to get the shot that he's best at. Granted, it was above the break, not in the corner, but nevertheless, Bridges is our best motion shooter, relocation shooter, as you mentioned earlier, now that Debo's gone. So I thought that was a good example. That's something that we see comparatively to Tibbs probably runs or allows Brunson to run the most action himself, which is why I criticized Cam Payne's inability to do so, because the non-Brunson minutes are where the Knicks really suffer. We have an issue generating offense, specifically with our bench, because that's not Cam Payne's game. If Cam Payne is going to run a pistol action and say it's Hart or OG running the ball screen and he comes off it and they close out and he doesn't have a shot, now what? This is where he struggles, because somebody else going, but it's also up to his teammates to run off-ball action as either decoys or ball screeners, or to get open off of a ball screen to have an opportunity for a pass.
Well, part of that doesn't work with Cam, though, is because the guys that you have play with Cam, the unit itself, those guys are not really offensive threats. They lack the abilities, or they don't threaten a defense when you see them go through these. For instance, right? for us to screen the screener in order to get a guy to come around a curl, those screeners have to be a threat to set solid screens and wash a defender out of the play, right? Secondly, after they finish job one, they have to be a threat to do something else. Slide to the perimeter for an open jump shot, roll to the rim, catch the ball in traffic and finish, right? Or go to another place on the floor and screen for someone else, right? And so on these guys that we're mentioning, Landry Shamet, Deuce McBride, Precious Achua, I'm not confident that they can do those things. And it's the reason why these guys are bench players, because they have flaws. I'm not saying that they're not NBA players. They are, right? These guys are probably top 10% in the world of basketball players, right? So they are talented players. But when you ask a guy, say if you ask Deuce to screen away from Landry Shamet so that Cameron Payne can rub his defender off of a screen so that he can find Landry Shamet for an open jump shot, is Deuce really going to be that guy that's going to threaten a defense there? Deuce McBride, to me, seems more of a guy that's learning how to generate his own offense, but mostly better at receiving the basketball as a spot-up shooter and knocking down wide open jump shots. And when you couple all of those things together, you're thinking, okay, if Deuce is that guy, then that means is Landry Shamet going to be the guy that can screen away or that can cut to the rim if Precious Achua is your screener up top? Can Landry Shamet 45 cut, catch a ball in traffic, and finish over a big? Is Landry Shamet able to do that? No, Landry Shamet's mostly a shooter. It's a good touch, mostly, but he's not going to be that guy. And is Precious Achua, if he screens up top, is he ever going to threaten a defense with a jump shot from the top of the key? Or is he going to be the example of a big that screens up top, rolls to the basket, and never gets the ball because defenses know how to defend the basic pick and roll in that set that you mentioned? So is Cam in a good place? I don't know. Is Deuce in a good place? I don't know. I don't know if the team is perfect. I think the additions that you mentioned a few moments ago, once we add others to the team, I think you'll probably see a lot of chat. What's the word I'm looking for? When plus multiplier. When we add a guy that can be a plus multiplier, a guy that makes Deuce better just by existing in blue and orange, I think you'll probably see Cam, if he's back, then you'll see Cam get better, Deuce get better, and then that person bringing their individual talents here and contributing what they've normally contributed, or our development staff unlocking, say, a thing like you mentioned, Hartenstein, like Hartenstein's legendary floater, right, is a thing now since he became the Knicks helped unlock that, right? So, yeah, the campaign thing is intriguing to me. I just don't know. Or maybe we just go out and get a guy that's better than Cameron Payne, and we won't even have this conversation.
And that guy could be Tyler Kolek, not next year, but maybe in 2 years when he learns to play consistent team-oriented defense. I don't think he's there yet or even close to being there. It's funny. You create your own puzzle and you kind of figure it out on your own.
Right.
And your last monologue. And I agree with you.
Right.
And I disagree with you. Is Shamet and Deuce that guy? I think they can be. I don't think there's enough motion, and they're not taking the initiative to set those rub screens that you were talking about.
Yeah.
You're not seeing that.
Or a ghost screen or a 45 cut or
They're
a
not.
flare screen.
And I think that's where you see Tibbs hands off, where I think he should be more hands on. I mean, let's be honest. This guy's like, 71, 72 years old. He knows more about offensive sets and running a basketball team than everyone on Knicks Twitter combined times 10. He's a legitimate coach for sure. I think he allows his players to have autonomy and to run the team as they see fit, depending on what the defenses are giving them. Brunson is so high IQ, he's able to bail out the team himself and other players because of his playmaking chops. Deuce is not there yet. I don't think Payne will ever be there. It's not Payne's mentality.
Yeah.
I think Deuce can have the mentality, but it's going to take more reps in that role. He's not going to be able to do it at off guard as much as leading the team himself with the bench unit. But Precious is, to me, the key. He's been the guy that I think has really stopped the second unit from getting a lot of good looks because of the rotations and the mismatches Tibbs has put on the floor, like all the bench guys at once, or combinations of Precious and Mitch, or Precious and Josh Hart. Those combinations where you have multiple guys that are incapable of doing multiple things at once, that's where it gets really clunky. And you really need Brunson, but most of the time Brunson's on the bench in those moments, which is why I think you see a lot of a fan base clamoring for a Kolek, where I think it should really come from a Devo, where his main, or iHeart, where their main role is not to be a backup point guard, but the fact that they can play make at their position makes him lethal in secondary and tertiary action. We saw that from Devo with his repositioning, but we also saw from, all right, you touched on the floater. I called it a little push shot in the mid-range. That became our best bailout shot last year. He also, in that same elbow, high post, or at the level, he also was finding backdoor cutters at a rate that we're not finding anymore. And we don't have great backdoor cutters. Devo was one of our best backdoor cutters, but on the bench, Precious comes and goes. He ebbs and flows in his ability to be a lethal backdoor cutter. I think he's really waned in the last 2 months with his effectiveness, but also the motion. When the motion's not there, then all of this is for naught, because all these opportunities, it's not even happening. As these guys are standing, waiting for the ball to be passed to them in the corner, or they're just watching someone go an ISO, whether it's Cam or Shamit or Deuce, and usually it leads to a turnover or a brick shot.
Yeah. And so that's one of my points of contention with Jalen Brunson, right? Because there is a misnomer in Knicks universe about 5-out offense. It's our buzz phrase for the year. Like every year, the Knicks fans have the Knicks fan base has two things, right? A buzz phrase and a scapegoat. Every year, we start the year searching for those two things, right? Every year, and so one of the things that puzzles me is our fascination with the term 5-out, right? And so 5-out is going to start with 5 personnel, 5 people that have the ability and willingness to dribble, pass, and shoot. And as soon as one of those guys on the floor is not willing to dribble, pass, and shoot, you don't have a 5-out offense. Immediately, off the rip, when one guy is not looking to be aggressive to dribble, pass, or shoot, you automatically are in a 1-4 set, right? Immediately, right? And Josh Hart has been that guy for us a lot of nights, where the passing part is there, right? The dribbling part is there, but the willingness to take the open shot that the defense gives you is, I think, the anchor that's going to drag the ship down. And not that he has to be great at it, but he has to be willing at it so that Jalen Brunson can have freedom in these driving, like you mentioned, these cuts. Why would OG Anunoby cut into a defense that has 2 eyes on him cutting in their direction because Josh Hart doesn't have the willingness to shoot? How can Mikal Bridges get into his sweet spot, his honey hole? Like, we know Mikal Bridges' sweet spot, his honey hole, is getting to that 8 to 12 foot range and shooting that fadeaway that he loves, right? But if you have one guy on the floor whose defender is sagging into that area because another guy is not willing to shoot, it cuts off Mikal Bridges' offense. It cuts off OG. Do you remember the time, chat? Y'all remember at the beginning of the season when OG Anunoby seemed like he was dunking about 4 times a game? That was when Josh Hart was willing to at least shoot the ball or at least give the impression that he would shoot. But now that teams know he's an unwilling shooter, you see less dunks by OG Anunoby. You see Mikal Bridges' offense become tougher and tougher. You see Cat having less driving. In my mind, no big man in the NBA can guard Karl Anthony Towns on the perimeter, period. Right? No guy. I don't care who it. I saw him play against Wemby on Christmas, and I don't think even Wemby can guard Cat on the perimeter. Right? Cat is too quick. No pun intended. Cat quickness, but Cat is too quick at his size. He's too strong at his size, and his handle against 7-footers is a lethal weapon, so to speak. Guy 6'6" can maybe guard Cat like Draymond the other night, but even Draymond the other night, a Hall of Fame guy, a Hall of Fame level defender, right? Cat roasted him early in that game. It took Cat getting in foul trouble in order for them to neutralize Karl Anthony Towns. But to that point of the motions and such in the 5-out, you got to have this star formation. You got to have the floor spread with 5 guys creating driving lanes. And chat, y'all have been to games before. You know that 3,000 or what is it, 3,500 square feet in that half court, whatever number that is, that becomes really compacted when you don't shoot threes or guys won't take open shots. Right now, 5 guys on defense can cover 1,200 square feet. Right, that's easy for the defense to guard. But when they have to guard 2,000 square feet, you have creases where Jalen Brunson can take his man off the dribble and get his floater up in the lane. And the same thing with others. So, yeah, Lee, that's my take, man. I didn't mean to get too babbly on it. I love offense, bro. I love watching offense. I'm not in love with it like I want to score 150 points a night, but I like watching elite, well-executed offensive basketball in the half court.
Yeah, I kind of just let you cook, man. I thought that was one of the best monologues I've heard in quite some time about the Nets offense. And you raised a lot of good points, no notes and no disagreements. I would make a claim. This might be a hot take. Would love to be proven wrong. I don't think at any point in the Knicks franchise history have they had a 5-out offense, and that includes this season.
Right.
And you hit the nail on the head. It's because Josh Hart, we have to hide him in the dunker spot a lot. And you're right, we're running 1-4 sets. And when OG was in that dunker spot in a lot of opportunities, that's where he was at his most successful in the month of December for many different reasons. He was actually even playmaking out of that spot a little bit as well. And like between him and Bridges and under the basket, or him and Hart under the basket. We're no longer seeing that because now the offense is having to struggle to hide Hart on the perimeter or hide him in the dunker spot, where he's been pretty ineffective over the last month and a half. I think the things that we talked about, we're kind of solving the problem as we talk, which great conversations do with the bench, the secondary action, what's happening with these, you said the ghost screens and the 45 cuts. Those things can be possible by putting Josh Hart on the bench. Hart would be kind of the perfect playmaker, not at the point, at lead guard, but at the 3 or the 4 to really make other action happen around him easier for his teammates, because he's the one who's able to mimic a little bit of what Hart did at the elbow and the high post, that Draymond Green action where he's kind of orchestrating the offense in his sweet spot. We can also feel comfortable to pull up and hit that J so you can't guard him too tight or give him too much space. That to me is the best option. I've argued for Shamet being a starting lineup. I got both.
Whoa, wait a minute. Did you say Landry Shamet in the starting lineup?
I did. It's one of my most viral tweets. I over a couple hundred people agree with me. I think I went to like 500 likes on Twitter, but I also had people in the comments that were burning me and dragging me because they thought I said this back in December. They thought Landry Shamet was a bum. And to their credit, to my credit's credit, Shamet has also had, up until recently, a hesitancy to pull the trigger when he's open on the 3-point line. I wanted him to be a more aggressive. Another reason why I think we're not going to be a 5-out offense, even if we did have Josh Hart shooting threes, not hitting, but shooting.
Shooting them,
we don't shoot enough threes in volume to ever be a 5-out offense. So we're like 5-out light at our best because we're just not a team, for whatever reason, and this includes Cat, This includes above the break threes from McHale, above the break threes from Brunson. We just don't shoot a lot of them. OG might be our highest volume 3-point shooter. On a team that has Brunson and Cat and Bridges, something's wrong.
Something's
Cat should be taking
wrong.
9 or 10 a game, in my opinion. I think he let TNT, Shaq, and Charles get in his head too much to be more physical in the paint. That's great and all, but we also need a balance of you being a badass, dominant beast in the low block, and also being able to be a threat on the perimeter to open up those driving lanes for Brunson, open up those driving lanes for even Hart and Bridges as well when they're off ball, to then be that playmaker we've seen at the high post and get these guys and cut opportunities, and just have your defense have to guard you differently, be more creative, and don't be so scripted. And until we really implement those new wrinkles, I think eventually we will. It might take even up until next season. But in Bridges Hart goes back to the bench, that's when we'll fully be unlocked. But even then, I don't think we'll ever be a 5-on offense. And I don't think we'll ever just shoot the volume to be a threat in that sense. We just need to shoot more and take better threes.
Right. Still Knicks fans in the building. Salute. DeRoss, man, I see y'all. The 5-out offense thing, everybody, is an offense that it thrives on punishing the crease. Right? Like in a 5-out offense, the offensive player with the basketball, or every offensive player always has a two-way go, right? They always have a two-way go. But if the defense can sit on one of those directions,
I see,
because another guy is not willing to threaten.
I see what you mean now.
Yeah. So when you say, for instance, Cat is at the top of the key with the basketball, right? And OG is in the corner waiting on that three that he likes to shoot, right? But Josh Hart is in the opposite corner and his man is on the box, right? Say if Josh's man is on the box, now you take away Carl Anthony's right-handed drive to the rim.
Yeah.
Now Cat has to take his man off the dribble left-handed, right? Simply because if Cat kicked that ball to the corner, Josh Hart won't do anything with it. And his defender is not even going to go out there. Right. Now you have to reset. Now you have to reset your offense and hurry up and get the ball to Brunson so that Brunson can make something out of nothing.
You just described what's been ailing us all season, which are when Cat sees that, his turnover prone mindset is, I'm going to barrel my way to the paint and try to draw a foul. Yeah. One part's not his fault. He has one of the worst whistles in the NBA. So he's not getting those calls. Second is his fault, which is the high IQ ability to get to the paint and use your body to defer contact, but also to absorb it in order to draw the foul. Enough to where you're able to deflect it to get to your sweet spot where you know you can at least, that's where I have this rhythm of hitting a shot 5-8 feet out and then be able to absorb a contact and then get an and one or a trip to the line. That's where he's really hurt us, because so many times that we've had momentum or we need a shot to tie the game or take the lead by one where we're mounting a comeback, he gets in that mindset and Josh Hart becomes the 1-4 set. Well, now he's this odd man out to where his man is hedging and he's able to collapse in the paint and create that wall, which then ends up turning over to a turnover or an offensive foul. That has been, to me, the most frustrating part of our entire offense. Even when we do an ISO mode, it doesn't bother me as much as that, which is both Tibbs' fault, Cat's fault, and Hart's fault.
And one other thing about this, about the Josh Hart thing, and so I love Josh Hart, right? But you can love somebody and be frustrated with them at the same time, right?
Yeah, so I frustrate myself every day.
Yeah.
And I love myself.
Right. It's funny that you say that, man. I was thinking a song popped into my head, Man in the Mirror. When
it's one of Michael's best, man, for sure.
Right. But the thing about what you just mentioned, and I guess in what I alluded to, is Cat's drive to the rim. If Josh Hart were a leaper, right? Or let me say, I'm just going to say two parts. If OG Anunoby was in that corner and his man hedged, OG can cut baseline and accept lobs from Cat.
Hell yeah,
who's on the way, right? But you have to have OG in the opposite corner because he's a trustworthy and willing 3-point shooter. So that eliminates your leaper. That eliminates your what type player? That eliminates your
athletic finisher.
It eliminates your athletic finisher because that Josh's defender is sagged all the way to the box,
right,
and is defending the baseline and hedging on Cat at the same time,
right.
While because he doesn't have 3-point corner responsibility because the guy won't shoot, right? But if you had the athletic finisher, or if you had Landry Shamet in OG Anunoby's corner, and OG Anunoby was on that side, now OG Anunoby can shoot the 3 or be your athletic finisher.
It's one of the reasons why I advocated for Shamet over Hart in a starting lineup. I got killed because people are like 3 points per game, and he's a terrible defender. When in reality, he's been one of our best defenders, one of our best transition defenders, one of our best pick and roll defenders, one of our best defenders on an island. He's been solid. Him and Payne had both been solid all season. I have complaints about both those guys. Defense is not one of my complaints about Payne or Shamet. So in my sense, I'm like, well, at least that fixes us offensively. Because, we've been top 5 offensive rating at certain points of a season. I think maybe right now we're like top 13 offense, including the last couple of months. We've dipped a little bit. But overall, I think having Shamet just as a 3-point opportunity. And he's decent backdoor cutting. He has a pull-up mid-range. He's like a C-plus player at every part of a game, right? Which isn't great, but it can be useful. More importantly, it moves Hart to the bench, where I think he can be super useful. And the things that we're talking about, that starting lineup missing, Hart and Devo provided both those things for us, and Grimes in certain opportunity as well to start the season last year. We're missing it, which is why I advocate to start the show until we fill those roles with other guys. Because I'm not one who's like, let's bring back Devo. I think it's very rare that happens, so I'm not going to wish upon a fantastical situation. We're not playing NBA 2K. This is a real NBA, right? There's business aspect of it. But once we find those 2 guys, I think that will solve a lot of the ills. Because I believe Tom Thibodeau can coach his team to a championship, but he needs really good players to make up for his flaws.
What do you mean? You need to expound on that. You need to. Sure. That's a bag you need to get into right there, because Knicks fans are split. Is a good way to describe it. Some feel like Tom Thibodeau is not a championship level coach. And then some feel like, well, if you need to get him that much talent, you can get anybody to cook, because any coach with a Space Jam roster can win a championship, right? And so, but to that point that you make about Tibbs having a really good roster, I don't know. And when I say this, I'm not detracting from Tibbs. I just don't understand it.
Sure.
So what do you mean?
I think Tom Thibodeau has 30 teams in the NBA, absolutely a top 10 coach in the NBA.
Oh, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Right. I'm talking about currently. And I would make an argument right now. This depends. I'd shift this game to game overall, encompassing the entire season. I would say there's an argument that he's a top 5 coach in the NBA right now.
Right.
He's showing improvement in out of timeout plays, out of bounds plays, end of game plays. I think he's shown a real improvement to draw up some schemes that are not just over relying on Brunson doing an ISO trick or a bailout shot. I think losing Randall has helped a lot in that as well, in trying to implement a little bit more off-ball action in those sets as well. But he tends to lead, like I said, Brunson to determine how the offense is going to be played. And if we had guys that fits the mechanical issues, not so much, we have a closer. We have a 25-point per game second option in Cat. We have 3 guys who could be the third option in Hart, Bridges, and OG. That's better than 9% of the NBA teams out there. A lot of teams can't say that.
I don't know how rare that is.
It's unbelievable. We got at one point 2 MVP candidates in the top 10 NBA.com ladder with Cat and Brunson. I think Brunson will probably finish the season as a top 5, top 6 MVP candidate. Again, he was last year. He's going to be again. Plus Cat. Right now, we just need the margins to be addressed. We need guys who mechanically fits a lot of the very severe errors we have with Hart's inability to take and make the 3 and the bench's inability to create action out of a broken play. Once those 2 things are adjusted, and I think it will happen next year, not this year, because there's not enough time or opportunity to make trades anymore. Over the summer, I think it will be addressed. And then to whatever Tibbs' ailments, whether he gives too much leeway to the point guard to call the set, whether he doesn't have, an advanced defensive scheme to guard the three-point line, these things might be true. But if he has guys that can supersede that with their multi-dimensional ability, as you mentioned, to dribble, shoot, and pass, those guys who like the Boston, guys like where there's multiple Derek Whites, right? Pritchard is now becoming just as important as Derek White. Hauser's becoming a heater off the bench. Cornette is developed into a very solid backup big to complement their super team. That's when I think we'll be ready to take that next step. And I think whatever ailments Tibbs has will be made up for and superseded by the talent that we have on the floor. Not a nuclear Golden State death lineup, but just guys who can do multiple things, play both sides of a court.
Those are rare, bro.
High IQ basketball.
Yeah, the Golden State death lineup is one of those things. The timing was right. The opportunity was there, and Golden State had the ability to put that together. Right? Teams want death lineups every year. If death lineups were easy to construct, everybody would have one. Right? And so when Knicks fans mention, we need to get a death lineup. No, we don't. Right? We'd be better off finding a leprechaun that has directions to the pot of gold. We'd be better because the thing is, the death lineup was a fit for Golden State and their personnel at that time. And the salary cap and everything was perfect for them to do that. What the Knicks need to do is just what you mentioned. I agree with you. The things in the margins, if we can fix the marginal stuff, like for instance, if we bring back just chat, y'all humor me. If we bring back Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet, and Deuce next year, if they play together, what we need from them is for all three to be a threat offensively at the same time, instead of the your turn, my turn, right? And if all three are a threat, then the 5 defenders on the floor now, instead of one defender guarding, instead of one defender guarding 2 defenders all over the floor, now you have one defender that's in jeopardy guarding one player. Right? So when and I know that sounds, chat, I know that sounds weird. Like, Uncle Freezie, how are you gonna say one player guards 2? And when you send one person up, one defender up in the pick and roll, right? That one player can stay with or in between those 2 players, and the second defender is just going to sag, getting drop coverage, and cut off all the driving lanes.
Right.
And so this is the issue that we have as with our players that are developing. I'll just say it that way, with our developing roster over the years. When you had Dante and Hartenstein, or if there was a world where Dante and Cat could have played together, you would never see 2 sets of eyes on Jalen Brunson.
Facts.
Right? Not because for one, Cat is there's a narrative that Cat is soft. But if you watch Cat screen, Cat punishes defenders on screens. It's the reason why Jalen Brunson can do all these things that he wants to do on the floor. He doesn't set escape screens like Mitch does. Run out there, set your hip, and then sprint back to the rim. Cat doesn't do that, right? He doesn't set escape screens where you barely touch the guy because you want to hurry up and get back to the rim and offensive rebound, right?
Like Julius Randle.
Yeah, basically. I have one other thing that I wanted to chop it up with you about. What are your expectations for the rest of the season, for like these next 30 games? And I'm including playoffs. What's your expectation?
I want to finish one more epilogue on our previous conversation.
No. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I look at a team like the Denver Nuggets, and when they won that championship, they had 5 to 7 guys. You could even make an argument 8,
yeah,
that could do a lot of things. Like I said, at a C+ level. I'm not including Joker.
You're including Bruce Brown, right?
Yes. KCP,
Yep.
those type of guys.
Christian Brown. Yep.
Yeah, and they had that guard. What's the guard's name they had? Backup guard came from the Clippers. No, his name's escaping me.
Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson. They had a lot of guys who do a lot of everything. They could playmate. They could make some action out of a turnover or near turnover or out of a blitz. They would hit threes from the corners. They all had their spots. They could play both sides of the ball. When they lost Bruce Brown, it took them a while to find that next point of attack defender, to find that guy who could guard the other opposing team's best player, but also hit a bailout shot when they needed it. And once he got Peyton Watson in 2022 draft and developed him over the last 3 years, he now has become one of the best defenders on the perimeter in the NBA, but also the perfect complement to that starting unit when he's finishing closing games with them, because they got that guy they've been looking for. Braun was able to supplant a lot of the offense that they lost from KCP as that trigger man on the perimeter.
Yep.
Russell Westbrook is now adding a whole new dimension with the bench, but they, to me, have become a contender again because of the farm system of developing Peyton Watson and allowing him to grow into that role instead of trying to find it with a blockbuster trade, instead of trying to find it by trading Michael Porter Jr. and hoping the pieces you get back are able to fill multiple roles. They did it the smart way. I'm saying all this to say I hope that our guys that I talked about, that 3 and that 5, are Errol Hotporty and Batum Dadia. That would be best case scenario. They're able through the development league, G League.
I have to toot my own horn, right? So I have to toot my own horn, right? So it's March. So in November of 23, I think it was November of 23, I told everyone, every show. As a matter of fact, you know how we have the background there where you see in November of 23, I told Knicks fans, Pacom Dadier is our pick. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Pacom Dadier. So I watched film. I was like, dang, man. My mindset was, if Tom Thibodeau gets his hands on this kid, this dude can become a Luol Deng, Sean Elliott. Well, Luol Deng first and then develop into Sean Elliott later. Right. And so my thing was, man, if Tibbs gets this guy, does that mean the Knicks are existing in the present with a future forward mindset?
Yes, I think they are.
Okay, so you answered because that was the question that I had, because I mentioned Ryan Dunn, Pacom Dadier in November 2023. I mentioned Ryan Dunn, Pacom Dadier, and Ulrich Shamshi, the kid from Toronto. I was thinking, man, if the Knicks get their hands on these guys, man, the future would be bright, because you could replace, because I was frustrated with Dwayne Washington, Charlie Brown, and Daquan Jeffries. Right? I'm not gonna lie to you. I felt like they took up roster spots they were never gonna play, and you were never gonna develop them. So what's the point?
There was no Charlie Brown Jr. muse for a reason. He didn't deserve one.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so when you mention Pacom Dadier, man, you know, I'm thinking right now he is in the Tom Thibodeau Postgraduate Academy.
Right.
Basically, the Postgraduate Academy is what I call when the Knicks get somebody off the radar, given the Tibbs, and then they turn into Isaiah Hartenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You get somebody off the radar and they turn into Deuce McBride. Right. You get someone off the radar and then they turn into a whoever. Insert quality player, quality cheap talent in that line. So I'm excited that you mentioned Pacom Dadier. Right now, though, I think the Knicks are grooming a young Josh Hart and Kev McCullough. I used to watch him at Kansas, and every season he would be great at one thing. Like, first he was a great defender, then a great playmaker, then a great rebounder, but he would never be that. It took him basically 4 or 5 seasons to combine all of that. Like, he was one thing in his freshman year, another thing in his sophomore year, another thing in his junior year, and then his senior year. Somehow he combined all those things, but you never got to see it on a grand scale because he had a knee injury before before March Madness, right? So you never got to see it on a national or international scale. But the Knicks wind up getting him in the second round, right? A talented, hardworking, fits the culture type player. They got him in the second round coming off a knee injury when he was on his way to becoming the Big 12 Conference Player of the Year before his knee injury. So I do think the pipeline is there. I don't know if we're in a place, though, where we're ready to start cooking the groceries, so to speak.
Well, if we're not, we sure as hell should start.
We should start.
And I think we are, because Brock Aller is the director of strategy. And I think that's the reason why you've seen twice now Walt Perrin scout for, first of all, Leon Rose makes the trades where he does 4 guys at one time. He did it before when we got Sims, Rokas, Deuce, and Grimes. And now we did it again with Kolek, Dadiot, Hotporty, and McCullough. Now, I think the 4 guys this time were acquired and then quickly signed, with the exception of McCullough, who was injured, but the other 3 were signed to long-term deals, very cheap. And I think the reason for that is they understood with the incoming CBA, it's going to be a lot tighter to have a continuous trough almost, of really good role players. That's going to become very scarce. And I think they're understanding that once Deuce might end up pricing himself out, or Mitch prices himself out, we need guys who are able to step in and be contributing players immediately. Also, Josh Hart is 30. So at some point, he's going to age out as well. I think the intention this draft, especially after trading the picks for Bridges, is these are the 4 guys we're going to look at as incoming free agents in the next 2 years. These are the new additions to the rotation in the next 2 years, opposed to trying to really find a diamond in the rough again, which is possible. And Leon shows it's possible, but there's only so many.
He's proven it.
True.
Nice.
I do think that every other team is going to be doing the same strategy now too, because a tightening of the nuts and bolts with the CBA is going to make role players a very hot commodity, especially once you're agreed to very cheap deals. So I think that was the thinking in drafting 4 guys, 3 of which who can play multiple positions. Kolek, I think, is the only one who is like very much stuck to lead guard. Hotporty, I've argued with Jay Ellis. I think we could have Hotporty be a very like a that's too hard, a D version of OG, guarding the 3.
Yeah,
I think he can be a very high level center and power forward defender. I think in stretches he can guard the 3. I think McCullough can guard the 1 through 4. I think Dadiak can guard the 1 through 4. Maybe even fronting the 5, like we saw OG front MB in the playoffs. I think even Pacome to do that from just a small sample size in G League and the NBA. So I think, yes, we're on the same page. I think that was intentional.
I think we're
a Brock Aller move and a Leon move.
Are you sure you're from Dallas, bro? Because I feel like we're brothers, man. Because you mentioned Hotporty and defensive flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. And so I mentioned that. So it's March. I mentioned that in January. Bro, there's like a synergy here. And chat, there's like this dude.
We took him, bro. Right.
Yeah.
Now.
I think I have like a neon sign going across my brain. You know what I'm saying? Like I have the neon thing going across, like 42nd Street sign going across. So yeah, I agree with you on all fronts, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. I agree with you on all fronts, because in today's NBA, star power is important, but second to star power is flexibility. Right. It's roster flexibility, financial flexibility, situational flexibility, and I think the guys that you mentioned fit all of that, right? Role flexibility, all of that. They fit all those things. The thing about Kolek, though, I don't care if Kolek's just a primary playmaking guard. I would like this Tom Thibodeau team to have a second guy that does that.
Of course, for sure.
Right? If he's just a point guard that distributes, puts people in the right place, call the right plays, audible at the right time, right? Like Tibbs can call a play because he sees man, and then once he crosses half with the dribble, if they're 3-2 zoned up, you're not going to run that play.
Right.
You have to audible out of that play. You have to caddy. You have to do something.
And that's where he trusts Brunson to do that.
Yeah. You have to Honda. You have to do something in order to get everybody in the right place. Right. I don't know if we get that with Cameron Payne, like you mentioned.
No.
So, but maybe the future is bright for Tyler Kolek. I hope so.
Me too. I think he is the furthest away. This sounds crazy, and I've debated people in this. I think he's the furthest away of the 4 rookies in playing meaningful rotation minutes because of his lapses on defense. He is still as much of a cone now as he was in Summer League. You've got to see an improvement, but I have faith. This entire, from the legendary Mo Cheats to Tibbs to Brunson and Deuce and Payne, I think he will get better on defense because this year has been the best year of Jalen Brunson's ISO defense of his entire career.
Yep.
He's actually, in my opinion, is a little bit above average now as an ISO defender at the 1. Now, pick and roll defender, cooked. Absolutely, it's obliterated guarding the pick and roll. And him and Cat have led to us. That is our Achilles heel. It's guarding the pick and roll 1 through 5, 1 and 5 with Brunson and Cat, and it's improved so much more with Deuce in that position opposed to Brunson. But, you have strengths and you have weaknesses as a team. You have to lean to your strengths and do your best to hide and make up for your weaknesses. And I'm not really sure how we do that beyond starting Mitch at the 5, but that's a tale for another day. I think
Did you see Mitch last night?
I only got to watch the 4th quarter. I was at a symphony last night, so I missed the game.
Yeah, Mitch looks bad, bro. He looks.
I didn't think he looked bad against Portland.
No.
There was a few timing issues, and there was a stretch in the 3rd quarter where I thought he had like 4 bad defensive plays in a row in rotation. But overall, since he came back, I mean, I think it's a conditioning issue.
The Portland game is just him misreading stuff.
Yes.
They showed one thing, he thought something else, and then his reaction was slow to it. I'm not saying that he's washed there in the Portland game. In the Golden State game, though, the ESPN folks just pointed out that Mitchell Robinson was gassed after like 3 minutes, like maybe 9, 4, 5, 6 trips up and down the floor. Mitch looked like he could take a siesta at that point. And then there was a play where Mitchell Robinson stayed at the free throw line on a 3-point shot instead of going down a rebound. And it was because he didn't have the energy to move his feet. Right. And so the Mitchell Robinson thing, I'm just going to pause on him getting significant minutes until we see the real Mitch. I'm not throwing Mitchell Robinson away, but until he gets back into the Mitch that we know. But even with that said, though, are we ever going to see the 23-year-old Mitch, or has fluctuating weight issues and injuries robbed him of his potential?
If we don't see it, I think the main reason is because he's not starting anymore and probably won't start long term as long as Karl-Anthony Towns is here. And I think Karl-Anthony Towns is here for the long term. I don't think I see people in the chat talking about a Zion trade. Cat ain't going nowhere. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't think Cat in any way, shape, or form is going to be moved. And I think the organization would be foolish to do so. Now, maybe moving Cat to the 4, because my biggest gripe in turn positionally is OG at the 4. I think OG is a weak power forward as a rebounder and struggles to guard too many positions at once, as you mentioned earlier, at that spot as well. And we'd be better suited guarding the perimeter at the 3 and having a legitimate 4 at that power forward spot. It could be Cat. Cat's pretty good guarding one-on-one. He's even
in space. He's a good in-space defender.
And he was last night. He had his moments last night where I thought he was a very solid one-on-one in guarding the ISO. Mitchell Robinson can then be that 5. But to me, I think Mitch just needs more reps, more time, more leniency to get in the game shape. Whether he ever returns to the freak of nature he was as a 23-year-old, I don't think it's even needed. I think as long as he gives us a really sustainable 20 minutes a game, 50 games out of a season, that he's worth the investment because his rim protection, offensive rebounding is such a threat. And I personally I'm very endeared to him. I love him a lot. He's one of my top 3 favorite Knicks, and I think it's good to have someone here for the long haul that remembers what it was like when David Fisdale was here.
Hunger. Remember the word hunger? Remember we talked about hungry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He appreciates the what we have right now, and I want to see him and Cat more. I want to see that twin tower duo, and there's some opportunities here coming up after Miami for barbecue chicken. When we play the Spurs with no Wimby and Charlotte with the very soft Mark Williams on defense, I think that Mitch is going to have some opportunities to show what he still has in the bag and get in the game shape in those 2 games.
I think I agree. I agree. What I don't like though, and this is just a personal thing for Knicks fans. This is chat. Y'all have seen that movie Boys in the Hood where Trey comes in and to his girlfriend's house after all the senseless violence and he starts punching the air fight. That I feel that way when I hear Knicks fans say Mitchell Robinson is the key to our defense. I legitimately want to dive off of a planet into the nether regions without ever seeing another human when I hear that. And the reason being is because we forget that defense is a team construct, right? Now you can have great individual defenders in a great defense, right? Just like you can have great offensive players in a great offense. But a great offense can't have 5 guys that want to shoot the ball 25 times a game. And if they don't, they're going to pout. Right. That's not a great offense. An offense is, like Lee mentioned, a symphony, right? It's symphonic. A lot of moving parts that move in harmony to get a great result. That's a great offense. And it's the same thing about a great defense. 5 great pieces moving in harmony to get a great result, right? So to just think Mitch is going to come there and be a one-man symphony makes me legit want to swallow the sun, bro. It drives me nuts because Mitch is a great team defender. Mitch is a great on-ball defender, but we can't have him save the day so the other guys can play offense. We just can't have that. Bridges is a great defender. He has been that his entire career. OG is a great defender. He has been that his entire career. Now, Jalen Brunson, I don't want Jalen Brunson smashing into screens all night, right? And then having to carry our offense. If Jalen Brunson's pick and roll defense is bad, I'm okay with it because the thing is, when you watch Mikal Bridges every night, right? He smashes into screens all night and people wonder where his jump shot went. People are like, why do we pay so many picks for a guy that's not going to be? When you watch the game, watch this guy smash into screens all night. And then imagine if that were you that need to take 12 jump shots a game. Mm-hmm. And I understand he's a professional. But if you notice, when Deuce McBride is the starter, that Brunson's out, Mikal Bridges' offense looks very different.
For sure.
Because he's not getting smashed all night on screens. Deuce is doing it. Right? Deuce is doing that. And so now Mikal Bridges can be an elite wing defender now, like he's always been. OG Anunoby now can slide and become the other wing defender on the floor and not necessarily the primary wing defender all the time. And now you can rotate your wings in a natural order of things. You want to switch, you want to run a play and switch. Well, you rub OG off. Surprise, Mikal Bridges is in front of you. This is the natural order of things, right? And so I'm not gonna blame Jalen Brunson for his defense because Jalen Brunson is on his way to becoming a top 10 Knick of all time. It's too early to say he is right now because it's only been 2+ seasons of Jalen Brunson. But after about 5 seasons, Jalen Brunson might be a top 7, top 6 Knick of all time. And if he wins a championship, like Lee mentioned, in the next 3 years, he might be a top 3 Knick of all time, right? But I don't want to see him get smashed on screens all night and sacrifice his scoring on the other end. Basketball is played on 2 sides of the floor. And I know we expect every NBA player to be 2-way players, but that's just not how the NBA works.
Man, I had mixed feelings on some of the things that you said. I'm going to focus on the Mitchell Robinson part of it. I agree with you. Mitchell Robinson is not the savior of the Knicks defense, and he should not be seen that way. I don't think that he is being utilized that way either, but I do think his presence at the 5, guarding one-on-one on ball against very high-level post players, but also guarding the pick and roll as the 5 is, to me, the final piece to bring us into a top 10 defense, not the best defense in the NBA. And I don't really give a damn about these very small sample size. Look what we've done in the last 9 games or whatever. I saw a couple of accounts push out that stat. To me, it's nonsensical because that sample size is not indicative of what we're going to see at large in a regular season, but most specifically in the playoffs. Like, we're so far away from reality with that stat and what that stat signifies that we shouldn't rely on it yet.
Right. And Jalen Brunson's not here, bro. What's your offense look like during that time?
Right. But I will say that, and why I advocate for Mitch being the starting lineup as an option, or at least closing with Mitch, is it allows everyone to play their best positionally defensively. It allows Bridges to be guarding the 2, OG to be guarding. And I think OG at the 4 has been problematic in some, both on offense and defense. Right. OG finally gets a guard at 3. So when you said you get off of a 1-ball screen off of OG, now you're on Mikal Bridges. Now that's possible. It also allows Cat to be a very large deterrent at the 4 and not have to clean up all the mistakes because of Brunson at guarding the point of attack at times off of screens. Now he's able to just kind of float and be a help side defender where Mitchell Robinson is now your primary rim protector. That, to me, it doesn't have to be the starting 5, but it should be the closing 5 in most of the situations, except when you really need a bucket. Then Josh Hart is in there closing, and maybe Josh Hart's always closing. Maybe it's in place of Bridges or it's in place of OG. But to me, defensively, when we really need a stop, and that's where Tom Thibodeau's mindset is, Mitchell Robinson should be closing the game at the 5 because it puts everyone in the most natural, most productive positions defensively, 1 through 5, including Jalen Brunson.
Facts. I agree. I just think you mentioned the holy grail of what we should be looking at. My thing is, I agree with everything you mentioned just now, except the fan part of Mitchell Robinson entering the game with the cape on. When Mitch enters the game, the other 4 players can just sit down and smoke a cigarette. Nah, bro, it's not. Defense is a team construct.
Yeah.
Right. That's what. So when you mentioned the fact that the defense can be, you know what? I would even say if we're closing a game like that, I would even take Brunson off the floor and play deuce, not in a close game with 6 minutes left to go, right? But if we're in a possession game, right, like subbing offense, defense.
Oh, he's done that.
Yeah.
We've seen Tibbs do that already. Yeah, I agree with you for sure.
Yeah. So not in a close game where it's you know, a transition bucket can blow the game open.
Right.
Not in that situation. But if we just need a stop,
right,
so that we can grab a rebound and call a timeout to get Brunson back in, I would, man, I'd be in heaven.
Yeah. And I would also say if there's like 45 seconds left and both teams are out of timeouts, so you know there's going to be a long string of possessions in a row, I would keep Brunson in. If you're up by 8 with 30 seconds to go, miss a match. Or hell, close with deuce. If you're really all about stops at that point. I think even Brunson would understand that if you don't need a hero shot to save a day. But yeah, I agree with you. You also, the last question you mentioned, I don't think I've touched on yet. I'm trying to expectations for the season. Let's hit 50 wins. Even with Brunson out, I think we should still hit 50 wins.
Right.
And in the playoffs, if we play anyone but Cleveland and Boston and we lose fire Tom Thibodeau within 24 hours.
No,
Without question. If we lose to the Atlanta Hawks, if we lose to who else is in the playoffs?
Detroit,
the Miami Heat, the Bucks, Giannis would have to go Super Saiyan for me to be like, okay, I intellectually I understand what just happened.
right?
I'm talking about Detroit. Yes, Detroit. Any of those things. We lose to Atlanta, he's got to be fired because that is a massive disappointment. But if we lose to Boston or Cleveland, then to me it's about how we lose. Does Cleveland sweep us? If Cleveland sweeps us, fire Tibbs. But if we take them to 6 and it's hardcore and we're in every game, they just happen to have a deeper bench. They happen to have more clutch shooters. Okay, we'll get them next year. But if we lose the Detroit Pistons, fire them immediately. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we have a shot to beat Cleveland. I would put money on us over Cleveland. Boston, to me, I don't think we're there yet. Nothing has shown me in this season that we are ready to beat the Boston Celtics in the playoff series. We're not there yet. We will get there, and eventually we will be there, but we're not there yet.
Chat, I have to put a Mount Everest size rock in Lee's shoe right now, right? I feel as if we get Cleveland. I think we beat Cleveland 4-1. I think they get a respect game.
Wow.
Right. I also feel like of all the teams in the playoffs, Boston doesn't want to see the Knicks. Now, I'm going to say I have the Knicks and Boston even. And the reason why is not because I'm a homer Knicks fan, but I think the Knicks have the ingredients that can draw the Celtics out into deep water, right? And have them fall apart, right? My thing is I have it even. I think I have the tipping point of that series being Deuce McBride versus Peyton Pritchard, right? If Deuce McBride can win his matchup against Peyton Pritchard, I think the Knicks can legitimately, right? I think the Knicks can legitimately drag the Celtics out into deep water, right? Now, does that mean the Knicks are going to beat the Celtics 4-1? No, that means maybe the Knicks lose to the Celtics 4-2. Maybe the Knicks beat the Celtics in 7, right? I don't think I'm comparing. Okay, so I'm comparing the Cleveland Cavaliers to the 90s Seattle Sonics, the 90s Seattle Supersonics that won the 90s Atlanta Hawks that won a lot of games in the regular season because you didn't have to game plan. You only had to game plan one night. You just draw something on the board that night. You fly into Cleveland, you put some stuff on the board, you watch a little bit of tape, and then you go out there and you lose to them, right? But in a situation where you put Tom Thibodeau against Kenny Atkinson, who is Kenny Atkinson in the playoffs? You don't know. We don't know, right? And then plus they run a double guard attack, mostly pick and roll, right? They have shooters that are fairly good shooters, right? But if Donovan Mitchell is not hitting threes and Jarrett Allen can't guard Cat without help from Evan Mobley, that's going to leave open shots for Bridges, Brunson, Hart, Deuce, Cam, whoever. That's my thought on it. Now, maybe I am drinking the Knicks Kool-Aid, but I think we can guard their double guard attack pick and roll. They'll reverse the ball. They'll reverse the ball to another pick and roll on the other side of the floor, and it leaves your defenders scrambling to communicate. And all it takes is one breakdown in communication, and they have a layup or a three. But in a series where you get 4 chances to beat them, I think they look different.
Every time, I love your monologues, man. It makes me think so much. You're like one of the few people I talk to, but I don't have an immediate response after you say something.
Well, it's a conversation, bro. It's the conversations
really,
to me, you know?
I'm really listening to what you say. You got my brains, my wheel is turning in my brain. I'm not as optimistic. I'm usually the most optimistic person when I'm having these discussions. I'm not as optimistic as you on either Cleveland or Boston. I think Cleveland would go 7 games. I think we would eke it out in game 7. I think they would all be super close, no blowouts.
Okay.
Oh man. Boston, the Peyton Pritchard, I think he sets man of the year. I think he's going to win. Sets man of the year. I think right now he is better than Deuce McBride, and I don't see Deuce McBride outdueling him offensively. Defensively, yes, but offensively, no. Pritchard is actually a very good playmaker. I would say he's almost at Derek White's level, which makes him so interchangeable and so damn dangerous as well. I think Cleveland destroys us. I just don't think we have a depth or the shooting. It's 2 points and it's 3 points. And that's what scares me the most. With Boston's volume and their accuracy, we just don't shoot enough threes to keep up with them. Cleveland is different because of Mobley's low volume, even though he's become a better 3-point shooter than he's ever been, and Allen can't shoot a 3. And they play so much Allen that I think that's where we have an advantage, is when it's 2 against 2, 2 points against 2 points, I got the Knicks. And in 7 games, I got them beating Cleveland. But if Cleveland beat us, I wouldn't say fire Tibbs. Because they're a juggernaut this year defensively. They're very deep, and they have a really solid
something is clicked with them, definitely.
For sure. And it's continuity. The main 4 guys have been there for now, how many years now? 4 seasons?
Yeah.
So that's important.
That's a restaurant, right?
Do what? That's a what?
A restaurant, 4 seasons, I think you said.
It's a hotel. Yeah, it's my guy. So I think the Knicks need another year of continuity, maybe another 2, in order to finally pull that chip out. Where guys really learn where each other are at their best. And I'm not talking about the Villanova. I'm talking about Cat, OG, and Deuce. The rest of the team needs to learn where their sweet spots. Most importantly, OG, and fully unlocking him as an offensive weapon. Because when he starts going on ball, it's just disgusting work. He's not there yet as an on ball shot creator. He needs catch and shoot opportunities, and his teammates need to learn where he gets the ball and dominates on the floor within the shot diet. But the playoffs, I think, are going to be very interesting. Agree. No one wants to see us. I have no fear of these lesser teams. Anyone under 3, including Milwaukee, I got no fear. A Doc Rivers coach team, I got no fear of. Yeah. You're right. Kenny Atkinson's only been in a playoff once. He's only won 1 playoff game. So that is to our advantage as well. And Detroit Pistons, probably my favorite Cinderella story of the season. They don't have enough firepower, and they don't have enough bigs in the paint to guard Cat. I love Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, but Cat will destroy. That's barbecue chicken. Cat will go absolutely off on them. And it's Cade. Cade's their engine, and there's no one even close to Cade on that team. Whereas Brunson, we got Cat, we got Bridges, we got OG and Hart. It's Cade. Everyone else, it's role players. And I think we smacked the shit out of Tim Hardaway Jr., which I would definitely be ready for.
Yeah, I'd be ready for that.
Me too.
Hey man, thank you for coming through rocking with us.
Double blessings, bro. This has been a very high level conversation. I've loved it, man.
Yeah, man. I enjoyed it. But even more than that, I really like to get to view your work. And I want to have our chat and our audience have access to your stuff, so that we can because clearly you have a palette of stuff that we can consume, right? So where can we find your stuff? Like, where can we become true fans of your stuff?
That. I appreciate that, dude. Thank you so much. So I cover 3 things a lot. One is sports, and I'm a regular columnist for The Guardian. So if you type in my name, Lee Escobedo, The Guardian, almost all of my articles will pop up. I've written about the Knicks, I think, 3 times. One on Brunson, one on Tibbs, and then one on me and my father's relationship with the Knicks, and how it kind of it's called How the Knicks Saved My Life.
I think I saw 2 of those. I think I saw 2 of them.
But I've also written on Joe Mazzulla. I've written on Dwight Howard. Ja Morant. I write about a lot. Kyrie Irving, about basketball in general, about the Mavs. Then I write about food as well for the Infatuation and Michelin's website. So that's kind of what I'm known for, is as a food writer and culture writer. So you can type in like Lee Escobedo, the Infatuation, and all my food writing will pop up, covering restaurants across the nation, food scenes across the nation, and then just culture. Like I've written for Vice, I've written for ID, I've written for Vogue on fashion.
You've written for Vice? Man, I like Vice, bro.
Yeah, on movies and film. I have a lot of different interests. Basketball is just one of them. So like I write it on literature, I write on poetry. This is the first year I became a published poet. I've had 5 poems so far in the year of 2025 get published in anthologies. So I'm very grateful to God for those blessings and my family for their support. Yeah, man, just type my name, Lee Escobedo, writing, and there's like 9 pages of my work over the past decade. But specifically, the work I'm the most proud of is my columns with The Guardian. So Lee Escobedo, The Guardian, you'll see a lot of my culture writing on the NBA.
All right. So y'all heard that, everybody. So Lee is basically everywhere. So Google him. More importantly, subscribe, or not more importantly, but just as important, subscribe to the Nick of Time show.
Please.
Right. Subscribe to the Nick of Time show and check them out. Right. And shout out to my guy, Jay Ellis.
My favorite person.
Jay Ellis, that's my guy. He and I have probably over the years have had a few conversations, and he's always been enlightening. So check them out. Lee, it was a pleasure, brother.
No doubt. I appreciate you plugging Nick of Time, man. Jay Ellis is my North Star for my mind and my soul. He's the smartest Knicks fan I know. And I'm actually the least intelligent basketball mind on KOT. This last season, adding Ebony has really put my brain through the grinder, has caused me to become more aware, to be more knowledgeable, to speak on everything related to basketball. So I'm very grateful for that team over there for making me a better thinker and a better viewer of ball. And I also appreciate this is the best non-Nick of Time conversation, seriously, brother, I've ever had. You're a very smart, intelligent individual, and I can't wait to come back and chop it up and disagree with you again.
Well, for sure. And so here's the thing. Here's the thing about conversations, everybody, before we get out of here. If you go into a conversation and someone doesn't make you smarter, or if you agree with everything, or both, did you really have a conversation, or did 2 people just talk?
Well put, man.
Right. So so I appreciate you giving me some stuff to think about late into the morning hours when I should be sleeping. So so everybody, we're gonna get out of here. I appreciate the chat. Y'all hit that like button if you have not done so. And if you're watching this on playback, if you're watching this on review, whatever it is, if you're not watching it live, make sure you still comment on the video. Leave your comments, man. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And on that note, man, we're going to get out of here. Good night, everybody. Peace.
Love you, Fritz. Uncle Freezie. Salute.